About the earthquakes that occurred in Chile and Nepal in 2010 and 2014. Let's hope it should be pretty straightforward. It's a geography case study. So let's first of all start off with Chile. So Chile is first of all a high income country. So this would be your, if they say give an example of a high income country, give an example of Chile. Now this makes things very, very different because, so the magnitude of the earthquake actually was 8.8, which is a very, very high, extremely high for an earthquake. It's very rare you get something like that, it's anywhere to be fair. But due to being a high income country, basically they handled it quite well. So the key figures, key stats that you need to know, STATS. So one is probably how many people died. So 500 people died in the Chile earthquake. How many people were affected? Oh, how many people injured probably is more important than that. So 12,000 people were injured. Just going to put a little kind of like, hospital, John's Cross kind of thing there, because I don't have enough space. And then how many people were affected? It was 800,000 people affected. And that's a huge number, though clearly not as huge as in Nepal. Also in Chile, there was $30 billion worth of damages, mostly from things such as broken buildings, mostly from infrastructure. Structure damage. Yeah, so things such as like broken buildings, that sort of thing. Also, those are some like just key statistics you're probably worth knowing. Probably also worth knowing some primary and some secondary effects. So just effects. So first of all, it's probably worth knowing that there was a loss of electricity, water and phone lines. So loss of electricity, potable water, and telecommunications. So this made things very difficult for Chile because it's quite hard to basically, eat, drink, alert other people to the dangers that they're in. They also lost a lot of roads, which made it very difficult to get supplies in, which, that's kind of a leading effect, is that that's not sorted out quickly. They also were affected by, coastal areas, coastal towns, were affected by a tsunami. It was very big. I think it was quite a big tsunami, not totally sure, but obviously it still affects coastal towns. And one more effect is that there were some landslides. It's also important to know that landslides is a secondary effect, not a primary effect of the earthquake. I guess it's probably also worth talking about some responses. I'll kind of just do a few responses here. Responses. There's some key responses that occurred, were that key roads were repaired in 24 hours. So key roads fixed in 24 hours. Now this is probably, if you're going to remember any response, this is the one to remember. It's a really kind of shows the differences. If you look at when this happened in Nepal, it was nowhere near this quick. But that was very, very quick. A lot of things happened that basically made it very good. So that will classify probably as a short term. Maybe I'll just put short term response. So these are all the short term responses hopefully that I'll do now. So power. So we said there was a loss of power, electricity and water here. So probably best to do it here. So is it electricity plus water restored in 10 days. So again, very, very quick. And that's restored electricity everywhere. Another thing that is probably quite good to know, that's quite an interesting one actually, was they made 30,000 of these kind of like wooden shelters called emergency wooden shelters. So it's appropriately named. And these basically just house people who had been displaced by the earthquake and who didn't have homes. So yeah, 30,000 emergency wooden shelters. But yeah, these are probably all of the short-term responses. If I just kind of draw an arrow there, just to kind of section off the short-term responses. There are a few long-term responses. Responses, not too many though, I don't think. Yeah, basically, after 4 years they made a full recovery. So, for responses, 4 years to full recovery, which is quite quick to be fair, from an earthquake of that magnitude. So yeah, basically, that's probably all you need to know for Chile. You've got the statistics that you probably need to remember, some effects and some responses. Now let's try and go on to Nepal. So it's obviously a very different situation for Nepal, because Nepal is actually an LIC, which makes things a lot more difficult. So the actual earthquake that hit Nepal was only a magnitude 7.9 earthquake. So almost 100 times less powerful than the one in Chile. Though obviously it's still very, very difficult, especially if you're an LIC, to recover from any earthquake, never mind a very powerful one. Some key stats that it's worth noting is 9,000 people died. So people died, obviously, well over 10 times more than were killed in the Chile earthquake. 20,000 people injured. I'm just going to get an injured. And finally, in terms of social effects, I guess the other ones are social, but 8 million people affected. So that's like people who lost jobs, people who were affected by the earthquake in any way. And it's probably also worth noting that obviously I said most of the infrastructure damage was the leading factor for the high cost of repairs. In Nepal, it was also the main reason for the deaths. So most of the deaths were caused by collapsing buildings. Which didn't really happen in Chile. Buildings just got destroyed, but basically because they're quite valuable buildings, it costs a lot more. But the buildings actually in Nepal actually collapsed, but it was only 5 billion in damage cost. In damage. I'll just make this a little bit clearer. Yeah, in damage. Yeah, so only 5. I say only. Obviously, that's a lot more for Nepal to pay back, and in the end, basically, they couldn't, and they had to ask for aid. There were also some more probably effects that it's worth noting. So obviously Nepal is home to lots of mountain ranges and home to the biggest mountain. And in fact, one of the effects is an avalanche on Mount Everest. killed 19 people. It's obviously not. It's obviously really sad and really. It's obviously counting towards the total dead as well, but it is obviously just shows you the danger of the mountains. There were also landslides. Oh yeah, probably worth putting landslides. This is probably a key fact worth knowing, but landslides just in general. There were also river flooding, things like that. So yeah, river flooding, and then as with here, there was a loss of power / electricity, water, and phones. And when I say phones, again, I mean telecommunications, along with roads as well, is probably a key one. That they lost almost, yeah, a lot of roads were broken. Now it's probably worth going to the responses here. Responses, and if I just put short instead of short term for short. And then in the short term, NGOs, which are like non-governmental organisations, so like Oxfam, the Red Cross, they brought in supplies. So NGOs brought supplies, e.g., e.g. medical, food, water. Those are the main three ones. Medical, food, and water. So that's probably quite key to know. Yeah, medical, food, and water supplies brought in by NGOs. The government also just urged people basically to flee. So 30,000 fled. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but Kathmandu. I can't really spell it. Kathmandu. Don't think that's how you spell it, but 30,000 left the capital of Nepal, which is Kathmandu, and people just urged to leave until they could sort everything out. Plus, also search and rescue teams. Search and rescue teams dropped supplies into sort of remote areas. That's the right term. Remote areas. So like places on mountains and things like that where people couldn't get supplies anyway. They had to drop into remote areas, just supplies like here, medical, food, and water. Now the long-term responses. There weren't many as well. Roads were built basically, and that was pretty much it. Aid from other countries. So roads rebuilt and money given from other countries. So money from other countries. Yeah, and I think the thing about Nepal is it's worth remembering they still haven't fully recovered from the earthquake, and it was a huge hit to the economy. And basically, there wasn't really much they could do. They really struggled to recover, even though the earthquake was nearly 100 times smaller than in Chile. It was obviously a lot more devastating. I think that's probably everything you need to know for these two. I'll just take this obviously you can get a clear view. Yeah. That's probably everything. Thank you very much for watching.